Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to another tutorial in 3D Studio Max. This time, we're going to be going over how to take your models from looking like this to looking more like this. So I've already imported the model I want to use in my scene, and this little piggy actually comes from a free 3D model pack from GrayscaleGorilla.com. It's a pretty great website. They have a lot of tutorials for Cinema 4D and some for After Effects. You guys should check it out. So, we already have the model we want to light in our scene. The first thing we need to do to set up this tutorial is make sure our render engine is set to Mental Ray. So I'm going to go up to my render setup, make sure I'm in the Common tab, scroll all the way down to the bottom where it says Assign Renderer, and I'm going to change my render engine to Mental Ray. It's very important that you select Mental Ray for this tutorial because if you don't, it really just won't work. So, yeah. Alright, good. Now that I've selected Mental Ray as my render engine, I'm going to create a backdrop for this model. So I'm just going to grab a plane here and drag it out in our scene. Make it decently large. And I want to make sure I add quite a few length segments. We don't really need any width segments, just length segments. And the reason I'm adding so many length segments is that when I bend the plane, I want it to have enough geometry so that we don't see any hard edges. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to go to my Modify tab, drop down my modifier list, and select Bend. So I want to bend the plane right on the Y-axis. So I'll select Y. It's not quite bending in the right direction, so I'll just change the direction to 90 exactly. And I only really need it to bend on the back half here. So we can do that by just selecting Limit Effect and increasing our upper limit. There we go, looking good. I'm just going to tweak this with my scale tool. Looking good. We got a nice little backdrop for our piggy. Alright, so our pig is looking a bit edgy right now. So let's go ahead and fix that. All I really need to do is add a Turbo Smooth modifier to the pig. And that helps our geometry render out smoother. Next, I'm just going to apply a simple texture to my model. So let's bring up the material editor. So I'll just apply the first material here to our pig. Then we will pick a material to use. And I think since this is supposed to be a piggy bank, ceramic will work well for us. And yeah, we'll leave it on porcelain and high gloss / glaze. All we really need to do is change the color to a pink. So let's go ahead and move this more towards pink. And maybe not so saturated. Let's take a look at that. Good. Our pig is now pink. So now I also want to make his eyes black. So in my modifier list, I'll go back to Editable Mesh and grab the Element Selection tool and just select both of his eyes here. And I can just copy our ceramic, rename it to be black, and change the color to black. That way he's got two black eyes, like he just got punched in the face. Haha, stupid pig. I'm also going to quickly throw in a standard texture for the background. Oops, want to make sure I'm out of Editable Mesh and back into Turbo Smooth. And there you go, our piggy looks great. That's about it for this tutorial. I hope it helped you guys out. And hang on a second, I think I just noticed something. Yeah, this render still looks really bad. So let's actually keep going with this tutorial and make it look a lot better. So I can close up my material editor and let's add some lights in here. See if we can make this look better. Let's hop over to the Create tab and into the lighting section. So for this studio lighting setup, I want to use photometric light. So let's just grab a free light, and it wants us to use this photometric exposure control. Just say yes and continue on. So we have a free light selected, and I'm just going to put it over here to the right of our pig. So let's move over to the Modify tab and play with some of the settings. First up on the list is turn on the shadows. I also want to change the shadow type from shadow map to ray trace shadows, and that'll help our shadows look a lot nicer. And then we have light distribution type. And that does exactly what it sounds like. It changes the way the light is distributed. So it defaults to uniform spherical, which emits light in our scene, something like this. So you see it spreads out from the center where the light is in all directions. We also have other distribution types like spotlight, which gives you Guess what? A spotlight type fall off for your light. Or what I'm going to use is uniform diffuse, which sort of works the same way as uniform spherical, but it only emits from one side. Good. Let's move down a little farther to the shape section. Now right now our light is being emitted from a single point, which ends up looking like a really hard light source. Let's soften that up a bit by selecting rectangle, which will give us more of a softbox look to our light, which is a good thing. In a real life studio lighting setup, you're most likely going to find some sort of softbox on set. So let's just go ahead and make that a bit bigger in our scene. And let's turn down the intensity. It's very bright in here. So that's about all the settings I want to mess around with for now. So let's throw a couple more lights in there and see what we get in the render. So I'm just going to hold down Shift on the keyboard and drag this light over to the opposite side. And we want this to be a copy, so we'll press OK. Then flip it around so it's facing the correct direction. And we'll just make this smaller here. And then we'll copy, hold down Shift and drag this light over and flip it around so it is facing the top of our pig. So we have a light on the right side, the left side, and on top of our piggy. Let's take a render and see what we got. So right away I can tell it is way too bright. We're going to need to knock back the intensity of these lights quite a bit. So starting with this light, I'm going to knock this all the way down to 50. This light should probably be around 50 as well. And this light, drop down to maybe, let's go for 120. Now let's take a render and see what we're working with. Alright, this render's looking way better. The only other thing I would suggest changing right now would be the shadow samples. Maybe bump them up to 64, maybe 120 if you're feeling crazy. Just remember, the higher you make your shadow samples, the less noisy your shadows will be. But your render time's going to increase drastically as well. Alright, that's a pretty good looking pig. The only other thing you'd really want to do is throw this in Photoshop and tweak the colors. Or if you're feeling a little crazy and want to experiment, you could always hop over to your indirect illumination tab in your render settings and turn on some global illumination. But there you go. If you liked this tutorial and it helped you guys out, let me know and I'll think about making a studio lighting tutorial part 2 in the future. But until then, you can check out all the other tutorials we have at youtube.com/DudeLeePro. They're all free and they all suck. Wait a second, I mean rock. They all rock. Oh man, how do I cut off this shit?